All right. Hi, everybody. So we are back. This is our finale, big finale for our Dread Central programming for Black History Month. Don't worry, we'll be back again. All right, next year, we're going to keep doing this. It's not a one-year thing. Okay. So this is a huge panel. We want to highlight Black storytelling. So we have a panel of Black storytellers and people who read and engage Black stories in Black media. So we can talk about the uniqueness, the beauty that is in Black stories, Black storytelling, and Black storytellers, because our stories are here, but we're not going to always be here. And that's why we have to push our stories, because that is our legacy for a lot of us. So first, I want to start with introduction. So of course, it's Girl That's Scary hosted. So hi, I'm Jazz, the 40-ounce connoisseur. I am one half of Girl That's Scary. I'm going to pass it over to my dog, Kat.
Howdy, howdy. I'm Kat, and I'm the other half, the Girl That's Scared. I'm always excited.
All right, so everyone's going to go ahead and introduce themselves. Go ahead, y'all. We should be in that order.
Sharai. I am a writer, podcaster, content creator. Happy to be here. Pass it on to Ryan, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Brother Ghoulish, or Ryan, and I'm a horror podcaster, content creator, writer, TikToker thing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sade Sellers. I'm the creator and host of Afro Horror. I'm also a screenwriter and producer, and I am going to pass it on to our guest of honor.
All right, I'm Tananarive Due. I'm with family right now. That's so great. I'm an author, a screenwriter. I teach Black horror at UCLA, and I'm an executive producer on Shudder's Horror Noir, A History of Black Horror.
Yes, we are all here. Y'all are in the presence of greatness. I'm going to just clap for Tananarive Due one more time, because every time I do this, it feels surreal. Because I was like, wow, I just finished The Good House not too long ago. Oh my God, she's right here. But yes, we're going to tap into Black storytelling, as you viewers should also tap into Black storytelling, even if you don't look like us. That's very important, that you explore books where people do not look like you and have your experience, because that is where you get some of the world knowledge. You might not be able to make friends everywhere, or you might be, in the middle of Iowa and surrounded by people who only look like you. And I understand you can't just, transplant out of Iowa right now, but you can transplant right into a book. Okay, you can get the Audible, you can get some auto credits, libraries, everything. You can get access to stories. I don't know, my headphone fell right on out. Okay, that's all right. We're back. That's okay. All right. So first, I want to start with our bonus icebreaker question, and I believe we'll just continue in the order that we were introduced about our questions. Okay. So this question: can you think of a time where you were fully engaged in a Black story? And this doesn't have to be a book. It can be a book. It can be a movie. It can be the time, your Uncle Pee Wee told you about the time they went to the disco and they got arrested. It can be anything like that, because sometimes even those stories from your relatives, that's how you hear about your family, and you remember those stories. And then you tell other people those stories, so you carry them on. And I'd like to start with my grandma Jean. She's still here. She's still kicking. Grandma Jean was born in like 1949. So she would tell me about when I used to go to the store, right? I used to take a penny and I used to go in there and I used to get a cookie. I used to get this. She used to name all these candies and all these things she used to get with one penny. And she would just her and her friends all eating off of this penny. And I'm just sitting here in awe, because she's telling me this as a child. And as a child, I was like maybe 8 or 9. A penny was only a penny. You couldn't get, there was almost nothing you could get for a penny by that age. I mean, there's not much you can get for $1 right now either. They done changed the Dollar Tree, but it transported me to a place where, okay, this is a whole different economy. Y'all can go walk to this store. You and all your friends can take one penny and buy you an ice cream, a cookie. They bagging up the candies, talk about pickle pig feet, pickle eggs and stuff. And then they going home and having the time of their life off a penny. And I just wish I was there, because wow, I have so many pennies and I could just be eating so many snacks. But no, inflation, and I'm a grown-up now, so all those pennies must go to rent. So that is a story that I think about all the time, especially because I'm an adult who pays for things and the price of food is going up. And I'm like, wow, if it was 1950 something, I could just buy me a cookie with one penny and I would be all right. I'm gonna pass it on to Kat.
A story that has stuck with me. I can't really detail the story because my mom gonna kick me in the chest. Not for real, but for real. But it was a time where she had told me about an experience where she had saw like It's like paranormal related. And my grandmother, who's still very much with us, like she's very quick to tell you, yeah, I be seeing stuff all the time. But for her to co-sign this particular story, I'll tell everybody at a later date. But I was just like, okay. And it really stuck with me. One, because people still live in this house and in this area. Two, paired with one. So a lot of y'all saw it, but y'all are actively acting like this is not happening. And then I think it just adds to like my mom, like introducing me to horror. And then knowing you have real life ghost stories, like, and I don't really care about the validity of it. It's just the fact that, oh, this is this thing that everybody is experiencing. Like, what's really about that? So that's my story.
I'm jealous. That's great.
I'm scared thinking about it. I can't wait to tell you later.
So I'm number
no,
like
yeah, I was
six.
gonna pass it to you, sir.
You good. I'm number 6 of 8 kids. And so like there was a giant gap between me and my like 5 older brothers. And my oldest brother is the funniest person I've ever met. Like it's how I learned we could just be funny in the house because we were already a house of fools, but he elevated it. And he told this story about when he was a kid in the 70s and he's wearing his parachute pants and this dog attacked him and bit through the parachute pants. And he's sharing his trauma, but it's so funny the way he tells it. And I will never do it justice, so I'm not going to. But that was when I was like, y'all were wild in the 70s. Also, I know why you're afraid of dogs now. This makes sense. Thank you for sharing. You can't trust dogs.
I can just see those pants billowing, the dog trying to get at you.
He still carries that today.
Ooh. Okay.
All right. So for me, I wanted to talk about like the first time I read Octavia Butler, which was Wild Seed. I actually went into it blind. Like I didn't know what the book was about. I only knew that this was a person of color who was writing about Black fantasy, science fiction, and it just pulled me in. I literally just couldn't stop reading it. And then ever since then, I've always been a fan of her. And I'm always like telling people to go check out her work. I think it blew my mind so much because it was that moment, like that line in the sand where I had gone over from just reading one type of fantasy, which was very white, very Eurocentric, like dragons, elves and stuff, but then seeing the opposite side of that. And it was very Black and very cool. And so like it always resonated with me.
I love that, Ryan. I also love everyone, Kat and Jasmine, who mentioned their grandparents. Mine aren't with me anymore, but both my grandmothers were with me for a while. My mom's mom is an immigrant from Belize, so I heard lots of stories just about growing up in Belize. And the one that sticks out is she said, "Oh, I was reading one day and I thought I was sitting on a log. It turned out to be anaconda." Again, like Kat, I don't know the validity of it, but I love the story. But my grandma on my dad's side, hers is historically connected. She went through the Watts riot. She lived in Watts during that time. And she said, you know, people were rioting and people were looting. And I went and I got diapers for your dad. And I was like, good for you, grandma. So I love the ideas that our stories start at home. And my one thing for people listening is if you have your grandparents with you still, or even your parents, ask them those questions, get those stories. That's my biggest regret, is that I never just sat down and said, please tell me about your life. Because now I'm learning, you know, through other people, but wish I had heard it from her mouth, both of them.
Talk about it. Yeah. Well, I'll just jump in. This is Tananarive. I know it's a lot of different voices. Thank you, Jasmine, for setting it up in terms of family stories, because I was just going to pivot right to roots. Because I mean, I'm old and I was a kid when it came out, but it really blew my mind. And I did a whole school project on it. I started to write a book about the Middle Passage from a young girl's point of view called Lottie, Lottie, Make Us Free. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about that one, because in response to my excitement over roots, I had a conversation with my great grandmother, long distance, I will never forget, where she told me a real life family story about my ancestors who were free. They'd been freed from slavery. So they were working their land, they were building prosperity. And you know what happens next? The neighbors get jealous. I mean, that's probably the story of 90% of violence against Black communities during Jim Crow and beyond, really, is envy, fear we're gonna have something that they don't have. So white neighbors attacked. And my ancestors came together. They went to what's called a roundhouse, which is like a barn, but it was round. And they were up in the loft. My dad even drew pictures of it. So the women would hand the ammo over in these breech loaders, and they were shooting folks, shot a white person, and all of them lived to tell the story. For whatever reason, the governor intervened. I don't know exactly all the ins and outs, but that entire community was relocated by wagon train to Indiana, a community called Lyle Station, which is a historical community. And I've seen people write about Lyle Station, but I have not seen anybody write about that Battle of the Roundhouse, except I blogged about it because that's my dad's and my great grandmother's story. So it was like roots, but with power. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the sad ending. It's like, oh, he got his foot chopped off. It's like, no, they kick some ass.
Nice.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it. Oh. And this is why Black stories have to be told, because I mean, of course, I don't know that much about Indiana, but I've never heard anything about anything like that. There's very small stories where they talk about revolting or things happening to people and they fight back. And a lot of them, you have some movies about them, and those are the big ones, but those are not the only ones. There are towns all over where people were fighting. They come and take your stuff. They come in your house, just take your food or do whatever. I want to hear stories about those people trying to take things from them and they lose. You get spot, because it's not right. I don't want to watch it and be like, or hear the story and be like, well, they just took our roast beef and they gone. And that's it. I want to hear they took our roast beef and they thought they were going to leave and they never found them. Or they, one person left and they came in with two. Because that's where you get that, not just vengeance, because it's like, I'm getting revenge for you coming in thinking you can step on me, but also it's like Professor Due said, like the power aspect. You don't have power when you're just watching Black trauma and Black people getting beat down on the screen in the story and it's a sad ending. That's not power. Power is, yes, this happened. This is what we did about it. Okay. Even in fantasy, where you create they're trying to, oppress us. We're creating monsters or creating vampires or creating magic or creating spells or creating characters who fight that. And they were like, yeah, not today. We're not putting no chains on today, mama. Which hops into our next question of, why are Black stories important? There are so many reasons. I'm going to stick to like one so that everybody because we can pick up off the plate, because there's so many reasons. Of course, I want to tap back into legacy. I think it's very important to tell our stories, to have our stories told on and on and on and on to survive. But also, erasure is a very big problem when it comes to the Black experience in general. Like, they were like, well, this didn't happen. None of this happened. That didn't happen. Or, they try to minimize certain things. And it's not minimal. What happened to us was very huge. And everybody anybody can go to their mama or their grandma, or my great grandmother is still with us. She was born 1930. She's still here. Probably drinking a Pepsi, not supposed to be, but she's drinking a Pepsi and watching Jerry Springer. But she grew up through the Depression and everything else, and her stories are really important, and no one is telling those. She grew up in like Baltimore, 1930. Nobody's talking about that for real, and people need to talk about them and write them down, and they need to pass them on. Not even just word of mouth. Word of mouth is oral history is important, but it can't just be oral history, because we need a teller for oral history. So what happens when something happens to all the tellers? We have to have something where this is on wax, this is on print, even song, whatever, this is on paper, so we can pass it to people that our voice can't reach. So I just feel like the legacy part of carrying on our story, so erasure can't happen as easily, because they were like, well, this actually, yes, it did. Here's like 5 accounts right here. Receipts, donations, receipts. I'm gonna pass it to Kat.
To your point of we losing recipes, even though that's not how you said it, but that's really what's going on. For me, yes, Black storytelling is about connection, like maintaining that legacy, making sure that we're connecting the past with the present, giving us some ideas about hopes or things that we have for the future. And also so we can all know about things, not just our own families, but I love hearing stories about other people's families, being more connected to the diaspora. Like, what do other people who look like me are going through? Like, hearing about what folks are are doing over on the West Coast, people are doing in the Caribbean. Like that moves me, that excites me, because it's so interesting that we all come from these different backgrounds. We all have many different shades, but a lot of our stories are so similar. They're rooted in like a lot of like same like things, but everybody is different, whether it's like a different age, a different time, a different whatever. And that makes me happy. That makes me feel connected to others around me. It makes me feel a sense of tribe, even though like I might have known you for a couple minutes and I'm feeling this connection. And now I feel like that can grow from somewhere, even though I may not ever speak to you again. Like that is good. That makes me feel whole. That's good for me.
Yes, all that. Black stories are also important because when the narrative is told by other people, it is not fair. It is very flat in one note, and it's very upsetting, and you can always tell. Like 5 minutes into any show, I know what the writer's room looks like. That's my gift and my curse. And so you have to have people who live these experiences tell these stories in order for it to have the full richness and the full truth to it, because so many times we're seeing something and it's like, oh no, I feel bad for this person who has to like say these words, and I feel bad for this production. Why are we still doing this in 2022? And I have no answers. So that's why it's important for me right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll just jump in. This is Tananarive. We can see in real time the efforts to erase our history. I expect to hear any day. I co-authored a memoir with my mother, Freedom in the Family, a mother-daughter memoir of the fight for civil rights. I expect to hear any day there's some school system trying to ban it under this whole label of critical race theory, when it's really nothing but history, right? It's just, you did this. And that's really the valid part of those traumatic stories, is just to say, this happened to us. And not only this happened, your forebears did this to us, and you are continuing to profit from what your forebears did to us. There is a validity in just expressing that plain old, this happened, this is the picture, this is the letter they wrote back in 1909. But beyond that, when I teach Black horror at UCLA, I tell my students, yeah, there are certain things that show up in Black horror, cautionary tales, magic and ritual, ancestors. I mean, I can list racism as the monster. There are certain tropes we touch on, but any story by a Black creator is Black horror, even if especially if it has a Black protagonist. I will say it ought to have a Black protagonist. I'm gonna draw the line in the sand there, but because it is expressing a human experience from a slightly different direction. And I believe in all my heart that the one thing horror fans want more than anything else is novelty. It is novelty that causes fright. It's not the same thing you've seen 100 times, the same way 100 times. So how would a Black creator write a haunted house story? What is a possession story to a Black creator? Like all those tropes, those zombie tropes, how does that look through a Black lens? All of that is Black storytelling, and all of it is completely valid and necessary.
I just want to say, I feel like I'm getting a free class. I feel like I should be paying tuition for being on this panel, because everything you said, I'm on mute, but I'm snapping my fingers because it's so true. And to echo on what you're saying too, it's not just the erasure that pisses me off, frankly, it's the revisionist history that really pisses me off.
Yes.
Because it's just like people want to pacify it or nullify it because it happened so long ago. They even do this with the Holocaust. And I'm just like, what's wrong with facing the fact that this horrible, I don't know if I can curse, but happened, so we don't do it again. That's what like really pisses me off. It's not even just like you're trying to erase it, you're trying to make it something it wasn't. Like the way they pacify Martin Luther King, like, oh, he was shot in his balcony in front of his family. Like, please stop doing this.
Any good therapist is going to tell you have to acknowledge your past before you can move forward in your future. So we're never going to get to the next step because we don't talk about the truths of the past. Which is why people are fine with casual erasure, and they're fine with like skewing things this way and that way and not teaching this history, even though it's all history, literally, because it keeps happening. It never stopped. And so like, that's my rant. I'm going to pass it.
I feel like that's what I loved about Darkly by Leela Taylor. Like, she does a wonderful job of showing America as basically a haunted house where the pains of the past never really fully heal. She even used like keloiding as like an example of this in her book, which was really brilliant. And talking about the erasure piece that you started with, Jazz, like that was where I was going to come from it. Like Black storytelling is important because it preserves our culture. And this is a culture that essentially has been stripped from us over time because so much of what we do, or what our ancestors did rather, was the tradition of oral storytelling. And when, like you said, the tellers were gone, I think a lot of it just like broke down. And so we're blessed enough to be living in a time where all this fight has happened so that we can tell our stories, and we're preserving something that we're basically in the process of still building. And I've always felt like that was really important. And then Kat, when you were talking about like seeing each other, I remember the first time I read Black Boy by Richard Wright, it actually kind of like healed something in me, because even though our stories were so very different and our circumstances were as well, there were certain things that I saw in that I was relating to. And it made me feel like a sense of, like you were talking about, like tribe or community. It made me feel like, wow, he was going through this racist, because like, to be specific, there's a place in New York that he tried to go to in the book that they wouldn't allow him in just because he was Black. Around the time I was reading this book, I was in that same part of New York, able to like walk in and go through things. And it's like, look at just this time. And this was like not even that long ago. You know what I mean? Like, it's important to see where we're coming from so that we understand where we're going, which is like the spirit of what I feel everyone's saying. And how can we do that if we have, like Sharai was saying, other people telling our story for us?
Exactly. We should be the holders of our own voice, and it shouldn't be other people going, well, this is how I think y'all might have lived that one time. I read about y'all, so now I can tell your story. You read it, you did not live it. Your grandparents didn't live it. Your Meemaw didn't live it. And then just to piggyback before we hop into the next question, well, I dropped my phone, that's okay. Before we piggyback into the next question, talking about, when people erase us or tell our other story and they're leaning it to one side, they don't want to be held accountable. I didn't do it. And of course, we talked about them benefiting. They think they don't, you did not just people with inheritance or anything else. You actively benefit from all this systematic stuff that has happened. The finish line is over here, right here. Y'all are right here. We are all the way behind the wall. And I'm like, you can't even see us because that's how far of a head start. You think your life is normal and you got everything. Even if you struggle with things, you're not struggling because of how you look or what your family might have gone through because of the color they skin. You may because you was poor, because poor people struggle also. There are a lot of different struggles going on, but a lot of Black people feel them all at once. Okay. Yes. So let's acknowledge that, because they go like, I worked hard for what I have. It's always that. And no one ever said that you didn't work hard. We're just telling you, this is what it is. Okay, that's it. So let's move on to the next question about what do we find unique about Black storytelling and what's comforting. And I want to touch on language. I didn't get to read a lot of Black books growing up because I didn't know about them. They didn't push those. Summer reading list didn't have any Black books. I read Dracula. I read Frankenstein. I read, The Awakening. I hated that book. Oh my God. Passage to India. I read all of these books. And then one time, my 10th grade English teacher, shout out to Miss Martin, she said, and this is a white woman, she was like, we are reading Toni Morrison in here, okay? And I was like, all right, bet. I don't know who this lady is. I mean, I've seen her picture before, but I don't know her. Let me open this book up. We read Song of Solomon, I believe, in her class, because we read 2 Toni Morrison books, but I believe Song of Solomon was the first one. And when I started reading, I was like, oh, because I was able to cut those G's off the way it was written. I fell into it like warm butter. It was just easy for me to read the language, because I'm like, oh, this is how I talk, or this is how my auntie talked, and it's easy to cut off and read that way. And when I was reading reviews, people were like giving not just this book, but like Beloved and other books, like these low scores, because they're like, I don't understand how to read. And I'm like, but it doesn't even, to me, it doesn't even seem difficult to understand or read, because it's fluid like water to me to read that way, and then hop right into standard English if you need to. But I like the use of AAVE, the cut it, like I want to hear the sounds of our voice in the book. And that's how you have to write it in, honestly. And I think that's something that's very beautiful about books. When I first hopped in, I was like, yes, this sounds like me. Oh my God. And then I read like 1 more per books because I needed to. But I'm gonna pass it to Kat.
It's always going to be the call and response for me. whether it is in audio, whether it is visual, sometimes even when writing it, like, because when I read a book, I'm an extensive note taker, period. And I love taking notes in the margins. Like, if you borrow a book from me, you're going to read exactly how I was feeling, even if I'm like defining a word. But I notice, like to Jasmine's point, a lot of times, like in school or in my own personal time, when you read other books from other backgrounds, more so because, you know, a lot of Eurocentric things have been just pushed on us. I realized that I not only, of course, connect more to the books of people who are Black or other people of color, but I still feel that call and response from the pages. Like, I'm reacting out loud. Like Professor Due, for example, I read one of your stories this summer, like from the Ghost Summer Stories, and was just like, oh, like reacting in real time. And I know, like, what I find it to be unique and comforting is that this is an experience that I get across whatever media form I'm taking it in. I can watch a movie and see it and have that whole, like, oh, you know, girl, like connecting with the people. I can read this, I can hear something, whether it's a story or a song, like it's gonna always be the call and response for me.
That's well put. I'll just jump in. I think I'm a little out of turn, but I'll jump in here. It's kind of like the nod. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't see me nodding, audience, but I'm nodding, like that nod when you pass each other. Strangers, like Jasmine said earlier, or you may not see each other again, but it's like, hey, you've been through something, I've been through something. And those stories may not be your experience. Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs. Okay. So I really had a hard time kind of finding my voice as a young writer, because Black literature to me meant rural, like Queen Toni Morrison, Queen Alice Walker, or very urban, right? City stories. And I was nowhere in literature. My experience was nowhere in literature. So it took me a while to even know what my own voice was as a writer, but I had so much admiration for those stories. And like Roots, lent me so much validation, because I can look at the world and where Black Americans were and say, oh, okay, this is the system that was set up to oppress us. And no wonder we're still trying to work to overcome this, because it's so embedded so deeply in our culture. And the other thing that really speaks to me in Black storytelling is the sensibility, right? Jordan Peele talks about this in Horror Noir, just to take it to horror, because so much of horror, especially in films, is populated by comfortable characters who clearly have never faced much adversity in the past. So when they hear a strange noise, or there's something strange that's happening, they move toward the danger instead of away from the danger. So how many hours have we spent screaming at people in movie theaters or TV because they're just carrying this privilege, like, hello? You know, whereas when we wrote, I mean, of course, everybody wants to investigate a noise, but when my husband, Stephen Barnes, and I wrote an episode of the Horror Noir anthology series, and Rachel True's character hears a noise, first thing she does is pick up a bat, okay? Because there is no character I'm about to write who is a Black woman who's going to be walking towards some, talking about, hello? Without, she said, you about to F around and find out. So anyway, that it's the sensibility, I think, also, in addition to all the wonderful things everyone else has said.
Shout out to Rachel True also, by the way, who I love.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say for me, it's keywords, adjectives, or nouns that really stick out. Like when I read something that says hot comb, I instantly go, oh my gosh. Because you know, you grow up and you feel like, oh, maybe I'm the only, because I also grew up in the suburbs in a completely white neighborhood. So I was the only kid who was getting her hair hot combed on a hot Sunday afternoon. My friends could not relate to that. So when I see that reflected in a book, and I go, oh, or grease, or grandma, or, you know, things like that, kitchen, you know, hot comb sits on the stove, that makes me so happy. And it makes me feel just at home. It makes me feel like, okay, that experience I had growing up, it wasn't just my weird immigrant Black family in Michigan. That is an experience that other people have had too. I just was taken away from that because of where I grew up. It's honestly the universality of the simple things like hair grease, or even the hair stores. Hair for Black women, particularly when they have conversations about hair, makes me so happy. So those, I love when Black stories have that in it, because it just makes it feel so normalized. And it's not unnormal, but it is in media because we don't see it a lot. So when it's mentioned like that, I'm just like, oh, this is just great. This is wonderful.
Yes to everything that's been said again. I really want you to see No Running, because she takes a brush out of the drawer and handles her edges while dealing with her little brother. And in my interview with the writer director, whose names I just forgot, and I need to do better about that. Like, I was like, this is the only time in this festival I'm going to see edges even addressed. So thank you. Also, here are my questions. I think what I find unique and comforting is that, like, all of this, because it is a shared vocabulary, and it's also helping you fill in missing pieces of a journey, because like we don't get to learn about ourselves in school, and we only have bits and parts of things that are handed down through the ages and through the families. And so like there's something comforting in like watching Vampires versus the Bronx, to see them go to Blade for a reference point, or like watching A Vampire in Brooklyn as an adult and seeing all the Blackula references and like the little twists and turns of that. Like, it's just like, oh my God, somebody else has seen this, yay, as opposed to when you're around people who have not seen these things because they won't engage, and they're just like, what is this? I'm gonna give it a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. And so it's validating, and it's like an instant, almost familial bond. And I live for that. I live for that. That's why I love it. I'm gonna pass it.
For me, it's also the sensibility, like just pure, like, because I think about like growing up, and when I watch horror movies with my family, that's what we all did. You know, we would always just laugh at the people in the movie who would do dumb things or things that we would say we would never do, you know. And unfortunately, because there wasn't as much black horror from my experience growing up, that either I didn't know about or I wasn't exposed to, I didn't really get to see until I got older, like that explored a lot more. And that sensibility is what automatically makes me think of being on the couch watching it with my cousins and laughing at certain scenes, because it's all the more, and this is dark to say, but it's just true. It's kind of funny, like when someone gets got in a movie because like they made like a really, really dumb decision. So it's like, it could be the most gruesome, ripping, tearing, and we're just like, I mean, you know, you went to go investigate the noise. What do you want me to say? And so it just, that's always been it for me. And I think that's something that black filmmakers they just knock it out the box. Like literally, like when I was watching Bones with y'all, you know, just a couple weeks ago, it was just fun because it felt like watching it with my cousins again, or like, you know, just good times. The sensibility.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, sensibility. Also, Sade, when you talked about the hot comb, I immediately went to hold my ear.
Ooh,
I just was like,
burn me up.
My grandma has never burned me, but my mama would have burned me. My grandma was pretty good about that, but she was like, that's just hot grease. No, it's not. That Dax is burning up my ears, please. It's sizzling.
A little less steady as the year goes on. I said, maybe it's time I learned how to do it myself.
Yes. But I did it myself and burned my hair off. So then they didn't let me do it myself no more. So, you know, that's you got to draw the line. Also about Black voices. I remember reading, and I was too young to read this, before I even met the works of Toni Morrison or anybody. I read Donald Goines I was under 10 and I was reading Whoreson, okay, and Black Girl Lost. I don't know why. My mom never told me I couldn't read. She would let me read whatever I wanted to read. But she had them. So I just like, can I read this? And she was like, all right. I was like, please. But also that was just a very real view. And although I did not have that kind of experience, I saw things and I was like, wait a minute, I've seen someone do this. Oh, I know a house that looked like this. I know somebody, mom, who talked to their kid like this. You know, even if you don't experience that thing, like how real some of these things get, I was like, why am I not? And I still can relate to some of this. This is hitting a little bit too close to home. So yes, our stories are just very interconnected, no matter where we came from, just like Kat was saying. So let's move into question 3, which is the juicy one. What difficulties do you have pitching or finding Black stories? For us, Kat and I, we are working on a novel and stories. Now, for us, luckily, we found an agent or whatever, but you know, we were in a fellowship, and you're talking about like agents and other people, and they're like, well, maybe you don't need all these maybe could you tweak, could you change? Do they have to all be Black, or are you gonna use this kind of language? Or you have people trying to like edit your work. like say you write this article, and someone goes in and I'm like saying stuff like young warthog because that's what, or I say stuff like the way that's how I talk. And then someone go and say young people. That's not what I said. That's not how I said it. Why are you taking the spice out the food? Why is it too spicy? Why is it too spicy? Like, why do you have to change it to fit what people give it a worldview is what I've heard. Like to make it more of a worldview, which means less Black, because you think Black stories are only for Black people, and that's not true because you don't treat white stories like that. You treat them like they're for everybody without any regards to whether people connect or not. So all the other stories, you need to just like, this is what the story is here, y'all, instead of going, well, maybe the protagonist could be mixed instead. Maybe I said they were dark skinned with locks. Maybe that's what I said. Leave it that way. I'm gonna pass it on to Kat.
I'm just doing this because we're all here, so just gonna continue doing that. One of the most recent things, to your story, to your point of like finding research, not just for the stories that we are writing on, but just for work that we've done for the podcast, and not even just that, just personally, like, girl, I just want to just discover this new thing, how hard it is to try to connect or find other like people who are not white, who are creating particular things, like most recently, like Black writers, Asian stories, like, and having to reach out to tribe. I know I've said this before, but it's literally all the time, having to reach out to our community and going on Twitter and just like putting things out there and feelers and hoping that people can just send us their stories. Like just saying that tells you how important it is for these stories to get pushed to the front, because it shouldn't be this difficult. Like I shouldn't be making these discoveries for people as an adult. Thank goodness I'm able to come across it because I'm actively looking for it. This should be something that just, I just go to the library, any Barnes and Noble, any somewhere, and I shouldn't have to just, just stroll through the African-American section. Like there should be all stories that are pushed to the front and not just one narrative. Like, we love our homegirl stories, but I want to hear all the stories. Very grateful for Tribe because that's the only way I'm able to discover these things. But I would like to see that effort just across the board. That's just the thing. Maybe next year.
I'm getting a headache just from thinking about this question, to be honest. I mean, really, because I was very lucky when I started publishing. I started publishing in the 90s, and the 90s in publishing was like publishers who said, oh, Black people read Word. So you could get so many, mysteries, horror, they didn't care. As long as it had a chance, they would like throw it up against the wall like pasta to see if it would stick. And then and it was filmed too, y'all remember. And then that receded and went away, right? So the closest thing we've had since then was, after Get Out, of course, in 2017, after Black Panther. And then unfortunately, after George Floyd, we all remember 2020, everyone's wringing their hands, so concerned about Black stories. Let's bring in the Black creators. And also in the wake of horror noir, we saw this, the horror industry is like, let's bring in, come and pitch. All my friends are invited in to pitch. And then it became really, really clear that they didn't want Black stories. They wanted to have the meetings. They want that money from Black casting. So they'll take a script that a white screenwriter wrote and cast it with a Black lead because they think that's going to bring in that Black dollar, often creating very problematic issues in this. I'm not going to name names, but we can think of examples of colorblind so-called casting that do not work because they could not be bothered to groom, network with, and work with Black creators. They want to work with their friends. I hate to put it this way. It's not like they're raving racist any more than any other industry, but it's a very risk-averse industry, Hollywood. A bad decision, you can lose your job if your movie doesn't make any money. And this whole idea that they're supposed to be catering to a white gaze, right? To the point where they will tell you, oh, well, we have to think about the international market, the market in China. Oh, so I should make the lead Asian? No, that's not what they mean. They mean, no, we're just going to use that excuse because we want to cast it white. I thought y'all understood that we just want to cast, we're telling white. So it's very frustrating to be a creator, especially trying to get your toes wet in Hollywood. I know a lot of Black creators who are just desperate to get their stories on the screen, not even expensive stories, okay, by Hollywood standards, but it's so difficult to move past these gatekeepers, some of whom are sisters and some of whom are brothers or some of whom are other marginalized groups, but very often they just don't have the power themselves to say yes. And that's driving me crazy.
You guys can't see it, but I'm touching my nose because everything she's saying it's like spot on. That's it. You hit it. I have nothing to add to that except for like my personal experience. I used to work at Leah Daniels Butler's production company as a acquisition and development exec. So I got to see all the content that came in, and then the ones that we selected went out to pitch. And the one thing I will say is that it's everything that Miss Due just said, but also, which I find highly annoying, is that if it's not the right kind of Black story, the trauma thing is real. And it's either like they want this super traumatic gang related or slave related or something like that. And it's never, hey, we have a high action comedy about, you know, two sisters that go on a road trip. It's never that. And that I think is really frustrating too. And I get the people frustrated online who say, why do we have this? It's because they're not buying it and they don't want to. They want the award winners, and that sucks. Especially when you're a filmmaker like myself, who I'm just not that kind of filmmaker. I love a stupid comedy. And I love a slapstick comedy. And like Airplane is the funniest movie in the world to me. And I want to make more airplanes. So that's my experience, is that going into those rooms, they are looking for a certain kind of Black story. And as we all know, we're not monolith, but in media, we are kind of.
In their minds, yeah, we absolutely are.
Yes to that. I am tired of the we need more trauma. We don't. I'm also tired of, like, if you write a complex character who is Black, oh no, it's too unlikable. And then they turn around and put on Mad Men and Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy. And I'm just like, well, what's different here? I am also tired of the whole, oh, that's been done to death. And I'm like, show me all these shows that have been done to death with Black people. Show me. Where?
None of them.
What channel? I'm there. And so, like, it's just all of that. And also, if one more person asks me if the lead has to be Black, I will throw my computer out a window. I'm going to go ahead and pass it.
Are they asking you that in person still? In your face?
Yes. Because I'm coming from theater and I'm trying to break into TV. And I was like, well, I hear it more or less. Same amount so far, same amount. And it's just like, why? And I'm like, because I am, and I want it this way.
I have heard that about my novels, My Soul to Keep, where, by the way, the protagonist is a 500-year-old Ethiopian immortal who has undergone American slavery and all kinds of history. Does he have to be Black? The Good House, do they have to be Black? Okay, wait a minute. Oh, yes, to our faces. Not recently. That's why I asked, because I think now people have learned to sort of keep that question just in their minds more so than saying it out loud. But it's very, very frustrating. There needs to be change, wholesale change behind the camera, not just in front of the camera. It's great with the casting, but we need those writers' rooms. I'm like you, I can tell. It's like, let me look at this writer's room. I was watching a movie, I won't say which one, because lots of folks loved it, but it was a Netflix horror movie that had a Black character show up. And I'm like, I'm getting a bad feeling. So I looked up the screenwriters and I was like, oh no, this is not going to work out well.
So many movies.
I just want to add before I pass it to Ryan. Yes, we can. This will be audio, but the viewers can see you. So when you tap all of our expressions, they're catching them, which is good because that is the nuance. Because we're agreeing. Like if they catch the video, now if they catch the audio, then they won't see that. But if they do see the video, they're gonna be like, I see y'all, and not everyone's nodding in agreement. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Then I've been over here just crossing my eyes and cracking up. So
me too. Go ahead, Ryan.
For me, it was more about like accepting that like my stories like should move to that next level. Like I went through a really bad phase of being so critical and so hard about like everything that I wrote that I never even got to the pitching phase. So I think that a big piece of that was growing up reading a lot of people that I thought, I mean, and I'm sure all of us would agree, like are just exceptional talents. And I always just, oh yeah, thank you, Professor Due. Like, yeah, definitely like imposter syndrome. and it derailed me like for more than 10 years. And I really didn't come back around to it until, especially because, like, just to add context to it, right? I didn't have people around me who were in the industry. I didn't have people around me who were pitching. So when I did pitch my book at, like, you know, in my early 20s, like, and got rejections, I interpreted or misinterpreted it as, oh, I shouldn't be writing or I shouldn't be doing this, not knowing it was just part of the process. And so I think that can be a kind of like an obstacle a lot of writers of color may face, just because they may not know someone, or they may not know the process, or they don't know how it goes. And so they invalidate themselves before they even get to the querying or the pitching. And that was definitely probably the biggest obstacle for me, for sure.
That's real.
Yeah. And also, I just wanted to say, Professor Due, like, when you were talking about the 90s and like publishing, like, that's wild to me, because like when I started reading My Soul to Keep, which Jazz actually suggested to me, it pulled me in so quick. It's like brilliant. So I had to say that, but go ahead.
No, I appreciate that, but I really feel, I mean, because especially when I look at Octavia Butler and her trajectory, that I came at the right time. I think if I had started trying to publish in the 80s, I would have been pushing a boulder uphill. It was just same book, you know, but the 90s, they were ripe and ready.
Yeah.
Listen, that's how we got Fly Girl and all that other stuff. Because
we got a whole bunch of stuff in the 90s.
I was reading those books and I loved them, and then that's how I started writing little plays. I used to write little plays in the little spiral notebooks and pass them around at the lunch table with all the B2K characters in them, because, you know, we was obsessed. And, you know, it was fan fiction, which I didn't know what fan fiction was at that time, but I was writing it, and I had like 8 notebooks, and they was like, let me get the second notebook. It was like a series, and we would just pass them around. I was like, okay, well, that's how it happened. So let's move to question 4. Which stories, books do you recommend to like all readers? Like, what should they take in? Now, of course, stories and books, I need y'all to check. This is a horror podcast. I need y'all to watch Horror Noir. I told y'all on day 1 on that list, and yes, I'm pointing at you and you can see me. We're making eye contact. If you have not pressed play, you might want to go do that. Don't know if you need a Shutter trial, don't know what you need to do, but there's just so much information in there that's just so valuable that will help just expand. Because a lot of the people, some people were preaching to the choir. And I understand that there are people who look like us who are into the Black media. There's also people who look like us who have never heard of Octavia Butler. I found out late that woman was writing books before I was born. And you know what I was reading when I was a kid? Stephen King. Donald Goines.
Me too.
A bunch of other stuff that yes. And I love those books, but also I wish I would have had access to Octavia Butler's books when I was a child. Like Fledgling, I don't understand. Like, I think they're making something now, but I don't understand how that book is this old and it has no adaptation. Are y'all what? That is one of the most, and I don't even like vampires like that, y'all. I like some vampire stories, but that one hit. I was like, how are y'all not Powerball to Sour, a post-apocalypse? How is this not a mini series
about vampires and wearing that shirt?
I like this vampire. I said a few, and this is like a comedy more so. But you know, the old
defending.
School,
look, the shirt says vampire in big letters.
Vampire, but it's in Brooklyn. Like, look at the vampire. Okay, it's a specific kind of vampire.
Okay, point taken.
Me sit here. But yes, like that one, Fledgling, like these books, like they're just so good. And people are like, everybody read Pet Sematary, everybody read Carrie, everybody's read all these books, but like, no, you need to check out Horror Noir, the documentary. You need to read Fledgling, all the parables right now by Octavia Butler. If you got Audible credits like me, I love to use my Audible credits to tap that button, and I let them stack because I'll read one book, or I'll have some books. You can't see my big head is blocking some of my books behind me, but I might read some, physical book while I'm stacking my credits up, right? And then I can get like 4 books at once. So then I just grab them all. You need to look at Octavia Butler's catalog today. Professor Tananarive Due, you need to look at her catalog today. These are Black women writing sci-fi, which for me, again, unheard of. I didn't read those books until my late 20s. Okay. I'm reading Harry Potter and everything else. And I'm like, well, dang, I could have had some of this. I feel like I've been being fed scraps my whole life. And now I done found what a real food was. Like, I'm just like, okay. Wow. Because the language, the way they talk about what they aunties and memas say. And I'm like, I got aunties and memas and they talk just like this, or tell you what to do and what not to do. So those are two right now that you need to check out. Also, Skin Folk by Nalos Hopkinson. That intro, that's one of the best intros I ever heard in my life, man. I talk about Red Riding Hood like today. But I'm gonna pass it to Kat, so I'll name all the books. I'm sorry.
I'm screaming. I've just been nodding aggressively in the corner the entire time, like, yes, okay. For a non-horror approach, one that has always stuck with me since reading this as a youth, Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Now, although it's not a horror story, but there are some horrific things that happen in the story. So it's a little horror, all our stories have a little horror aspect to it, period. And then one that's new, that I really enjoyed reading, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. That was a really good book. It was a really good library borrow. And if y'all have not checked it out, go ahead and check it out. Unfortunately, they're trying to ban this young gentleman's book in the South for him living his truth, which is utterly disgusting. And not all Southern places, but people showing their booty holes, and that's what's happening. And I just really think that, this is disgusting. But these are wonderful books. Like, of course, we got our staple that everyone should read. And of course, you've got something new. And there are a lot of new fresh voices that are coming out that I'm really excited about, not even just in the horror genre, but just like people in general whose stories are being pushed and being told. So it was a good one, y'all. Check it out.
Stepping outside of the genre, everybody should be reading Samantha Irby. I read Wow, No, Thank You, and I cackled so hard I had to listen to it on audio so I could also hear her say it to me.
Yes.
Yes, because people are like, oh yeah, she wrote for Shriel. No, she's funny and she's writing books. You're welcome. I also really, really love our Eric Thomas, who had a book come out right at the top of the pandemic called Here For It. And like literally every time I open it, the world implodes. So I've stopped trying to finish it, but he's the funniest man on the internet. And so I know that book is good if I ever make it past that first essay. To get back into the genre though, I am learning, because I found out about her late, as we do with the Black authors, N.K. Jemisin. She is writing some of my favorite sci-fi that I didn't know existed. I'm making my way through her book of short pieces called How Long Till Black Future Month. But she also has a trilogy that I'm going to get into the second I can clear a week to be like, we're going to do this, because I'm for her.
Love it. I'll jump in here. I will take it to horror first. It's a novelette maybe, or a novella, and it's free. So this is something you can just go online and find it. It's called The Devil in America by a writer named Kai Ashanti Wilson. And when I tell you, I read a lot of horror, but it's Black history is Black horror, kind of in that vein, but told so cleverly and in such a devastating way. I was sitting in my backyard and the tree was rustling behind me and I was jumping. That's that feeling we want. So that's one I would recommend. I wouldn't call it horror, but it's definitely speculative. Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. Now, if you haven't read An Unkindness of Ghosts, also by Rivers Solomon, then go back and read An Unkindness of Ghosts. It is like, she is like the spiritual, they are like the spiritual child of Octavia Butler and Samuel R. Delany. It's about a spacecraft in space that people have been living on, and Black folks, and it's got farming and it's got hierarchy, but Sorrowland is just wild. I can't even describe it. And in terms of film, this has been an amazing year for Black horror. I caught a couple Sundance films this year. I can't wait to make it out in the world. One of them is Nanny, Nikki Atujusu. You got to see that like the minute it opens. And also, and I get to do a Q&A with the director at UCLA, Mariama Diallo, has a film called Master, starring Regina Hall. And it is, also just, so good.
I'll jump in and be really honest. I haven't been able to read a book in a long time, thanks to production work. But I have a friend who I wrote with on a show. His name is Leon Langford, and he did write a book called Star Lion. And I think it's a coming of age. It's not a comic, it's the word with pictures. It's
graphic novel.
Thank you. It's a graphic novel. See, I'm getting better. And I just want to anyone watching and listening, I guarantee you have a friend out there who has a book or a piece of work. And we're doing something on Afro Horror this year called the Year of Creator. And we're kind of just reaching out to people who aren't known, but who are out there. Check out the self-publishing list on Amazon, or check your friend's stuff out. I just really am, this year, my focus is like, let me read people who, like Ms. Due said, who are there, but they can't break through, but they've got the stuff, it's online and it's free usually. Or if it's not free, pay them, because that's how, pay them the same way you would pay Stephen King. So I'm going to suggest, if you have the time to do that, reach out to your friends and say, what do you have and how can I support you, and watch it or read it.
All right, so for mine, I have to definitely say Anything by Octavia E. Butler. I started with Wild Seed, like I said earlier. I would suggest it if you haven't checked it out. It's about two people who are essentially immortal, but through different means. So one does so through like life and merging her body and repairing herself, and the other entity, which is kind of in a love struggle with her across a century's worth of time, does it by stealing bodies. And so it's very like X-Men, but rich with our culture. So it's pretty cool. The second one I referenced earlier, it was actually suggested to me by a good friend of mine, Mark Estes, who I feel like you all should definitely follow. He's very well read and he has amazing book suggestions. He was the one that suggested Darkly, Black History and America's Gothic Soul to me by Leila Taylor. And that's Leila, and then Taylor's Taylor. I highly suggest that book. It's nonfiction. It's just a look into America's history and how we as Black people are living a Gothic experience through it. Like, we're the true Goths. And it's amazing. Like, you feel seen in it, especially people like us who grew up loving like fringe, like horror, science fiction, stuff like that. We feel very seen. She does a damn thing. Like, she dissects it, she breaks it down, and I'm constantly referencing it. So I don't want to spoil anything, but y'all should definitely check out that book.
Lots of great suggestions.
Really great.
Yes, I love them all. I want as many Black books as I can literally stand. I want as many as I can stand. Now, what is something, before we start promoting our upcoming projects and things that we're doing, what's something you'd like to leave the readers who are listening now? They're listening and watching, it's two things. So one thing I want to leave y'all with, and I'm going to reiterate this, even if you don't look like the writer, you still need to tap into the book. You do not need to wait until you're like, this might relate to me, because one, you don't know until you open the book and dive in, and that's where you're going to find the humanness where you can connect. Because I feel like a lot of people look at us and they don't see us. So they're like, I can't relate to that because I don't whatever. And I'm like, but you're a person. I'm a person. We are people. We're both big. Like, what do you mean? Open the book. Like, don't read the 15th Stephen King book you read. Open up another book, okay? And you can go back to Stephen King and read it later. The book not going nowhere. But I'm saying, like, step out of your comfort zone and say, you know what? How many Black books have I read this year? Let me read one, or read a high rated one, or ask a friend and have them recommend one so I can read it. But don't sit there like, I'm gonna wait passively until the book falls into my lap. And don't do that, because then you'll never read it. And that's a problem. Like, yes, we read our books, and our books are not written. Yes, they're not written for like someone else. They're for us, but you can still dive into those stories and make a connection, because then you maybe read the words and you can actually see us and visualize us, instead of just like, those are people over there or whatever. We're not like this separate thing all the time. Like, you can connect us because we are human. Also, step outside yourself. Okay, step outside yourself. This is me the 2-finger tap, as my soror would say, 2-finger tap. Hey, you need to look at yourself, and intentionally taking media by other people. That's an intentional act. You have to do it if you are going to call yourself an ally, or if you have BLM in your bio and you didn't read no Black books. I don't understand how that's going on. You can't just retweet a few times. I need you to open the books and hit play, listen to the audio book, do the work, and taking in the media is part of the work.
It's performative, baby. Just gonna be there. But to add on that, try something new. Like Jazz said, try intentionally go out and try something new. And then not just for folks who don't look like us, but even for folks who do look like us, go into, to Sade's point, do something that's not necessarily mainstream. Tap into those indie folks. We always are supporting within. It takes nothing. Even if you're like, girl, I can't do it today. My eyes are burning, child. The pandemic has got me for another day. It takes nothing for you to just retweet, just to push somebody to the front and just save it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we already know how the algorithm is moving. And if you can't do it, somebody else gonna see it. Like, just push them to the front, y'all. So try something new today.
All of those. Because when you don't engage with people who don't look like you's art, you're telling on yourself. When you say you can't find these books and movies, you're telling on yourself. And so if you just do it, then you can be a better person. And I would also like to add, don't read a book by a person who doesn't like you and then run to the person in your vicinity, not even your friend, to be like, guess what I watched last night, or guess what I saw last night, or guess what I read, because like that is also kind of gross and icky. And I don't want to talk to you about this book if I'm the only Black person you know. And so you want to talk to me about your Black books that you've been reading on your weekends. Instead, like Kat was saying, boost it on your social. We have social media, whether or not we want it, boost it there. Talk to other people about it. Don't just be like, Black book, Black person, and run and find me, because I don't want that. I'm gonna pass it on that note.
I agree with everything everybody else has said. I've been actually living by that own advice myself. The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. That's one of the scariest horror books I've read in a minute. Just finished Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Okay, so there's ways we can expand our horizons too, I think. And it just hits different. Okay, it hits different when it's from a different culture.
And to echo off of everyone, but especially Kat, I said it before and I'll say it again. It does cost nothing to retweet, but also to watch and engage and to buy. If you have the money, buy it, even if you're not going to read it right away, because it goes back to your question of why is Black storytelling so important? It's because if Kat succeeds, if Ms. Due succeeds, I succeed. And that opens a door for someone else. Even if it's not me, it's someone else. So if I therefore step in and read or watch or promote or help, that means I'm bringing success to the next person that looks like me or who doesn't look like me. And I think that's really important. That's why I'm also very cautious when I see Black stories that I may not like, but I'm not going to run to the internet and bash them, because I know how hard it was for them to get there. So I subscribe to the fact that Black people are allowed to fail up just like white people. So fail hard and fail up is all I care about.
Word.
If I snapped any harder, I would have broke all my fingers. I felt all of that. Mine would actually be in the off chance that someone who's watching this or listening to this is a creative who was in the same space that I was in when I kind of had the imposter syndrome and I was a little nervous about creating again. Use your voice and tell your stories. It's what's going to set you apart. And don't worry so much about all this weird stuff that we can kind of put on ourselves. Because I feel I'll just use me and I statements, for example. I felt okay, is this thing that I'm creating, has it been done before? Is this thing going to be perceived as too Black if I pitch it? Or is it going to be perceived as this or that? And at the end of the day, my father used to say all the time, everything's been done under the sun already. So that's an unrealistic thing to kind of put on yourself. Just tell your story, use your voice, because you're operating from the most authentic place that you can doing that. And people want you. They want to see what you're bringing to the table. And just because you query and pitch something and it's a no, I mean, keep going if you want to go that route, but there are people who are happy independently publishing or self-publishing. Like, tell your stories. Like, that's never going to go away. If you set this thing aside and try to go do something else, it's going to call you in the night like the Green Lantern and Spider-Man. Like, it's not going to go away. If in your heart you're called to create, then just do it.
That's so beautiful. Oh my God. Yes. So all to the writers and readers and creators out there, create, make what you're going to make it extra Black on purpose. Sprinkle a little Black on top for me. Just put a little hot comb. I want to read about somebody hot comb smoking a little bit. I want to read about somebody, you know, they overprocess, they relax it real quick, and now they got to deal with the aftermath because now your hair feel like linguine, and you got to figure out what you can do with it because the curl not gonna hold. Because that is a very Black experience. Or going to a salon where the people don't look like you and you coming out and your hair is fried because they don't know how to do the hair, or you get your makeup done and now you look casket ready. You know, just those things. So I want to move on to promotion about, you know, because y'all are sitting around amongst Black creators, Black writers. Yes, a lot of us podcast, but we don't just podcast. All of us have the pen or the computer at our fingertips, and we are writing things. So Kat and I, again, we're working on a novel and stories. You know, pretty much a short stories built around a sister who her tribe kicked her into hell because she tried to open the gates. And that's a big no. You can't be opening the gates of hell, girl. What is your problem? So they kicked her in there and she came back out like 300 years later, like, I am back. And I am killing everyone here because I did not forget. That's a really good time. I just get excited thinking about that. Also, just writing articles about horror. I wrote my first article a few weeks ago that was wild. I wrote about my love, just a love letter to Tales from the Hood, because every time I see that Rotten Tomatoes score, I want to swing at the air. I want to fight. It makes me violent inside.
And it was good. I just had to throw that out there, y'all. That article was good. But go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you so much. But just writing my opinion, because a lot of the opinions I read, especially about Black stories, they're from white audiences who don't even try to connect. They see some one thing or two things they don't like and go, I don't like this. This is a 0 out of 10, wouldn't recommend. And it makes me mad and I don't like it. So I want to be like, well, let me come back and say, well, actually it's an 8 out of 10. I'm sorry that you didn't understand, but let me write about this from someone who does understand, and, you know, give it that love it deserves. So writing opinion pieces and reviews and stuff like that, because we don't have a lot of that, especially in genre about Black writers. So yes, I will absolutely email that article. But it's really important that we talk about the things we like, why we like them. We talk about our stories, not just other people telling them, but other people reviewing them, because then they crap all over them. Vampire in Brooklyn has a 12%, y'all. And we have all seen Vampire in Brooklyn. A 12% is literally, that is abysmal. That's a crime. I know that y'all didn't like it. Okay, it was silly. It had some problems with 12 out of 100. I have questions about that. I'm gonna make a rubric about rating movies soon, like a teacher, so we can backwards plan. So I need people to start explaining why they don't, or why they rate these movies this way, because it seems like we don't have a rubric. And anytime we talk about things, I feel like when we grade things, there should be some kind of rubric so we can know where the score is coming from. But that's coming from a teacher spot. But that's what me and Kat are working on overall, just writing overall, and then writing just novels and stuff like that. And I got a whole lot of horror ideas, so we're gonna keep the momentum coming, because I'm not gonna stop writing. That's our legacy. I'm gonna pass.
Can't stop, won't stop. I'm gonna just put my fingers up on that. I'm just super excited for you guys to ingest in your eyeballs what we got coming out, because honey, it's the time. And I'm gonna just pass it. That's all I got for y'all.
Well, for me, sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't have anything coming out immediately, but we did just start a podcast called Life Writing, Write for Your Life, where my husband, Stephen Barnes, and I really talk to artists about how to basically create a project of your dreams, even if it's only one sentence a day, while living a balanced artist life. And how do you do that? How do you collaborate? How do you deal with rejection? How do you pitch? All those kinds of things. And so that's at lifewritingpodcast.com. And I'm super excited that this fall, my first graphic novel is coming out. It's a horror graphic novel adapted from a script that Steve and I got really close to placing with my dream director. I'm not going to go back to that trauma. Got it back, disappointed, but we've turned it around. Marco Finnegan drew it. Stephen Barnes and I co-wrote it. It's called The Keeper. And it really is kind of based on my memory of my great grandmother. It's about a little Black girl who's orphaned and goes to live with her grandmother. So, and some stuff goes down. So that's coming out in the fall.
I cannot wait to give that all of my money. Thank you for letting me know so I can start budgeting.
I'm so excited about it. It's good too. I mean, I can't just say it's, I didn't draw it, but I mean, it's good. It's good.
I have so much excitement. Also, wait, Sharai, you about to go? Go ahead.
Okay. I am Sharai. You can catch my articles mostly at Dread Central right now. Sometimes I also pop off on my own Medium page because you have to have the two. I am the co-host of A Nightmare on Fierce Street, which you can check out on Twitter at A Nightmare Fierce. We're everywhere. I am also 1/3 of Blurty Massacre, which is dropping soon. Maybe drop before this comes out. We'll see. And I am also part of the Alter Tapes, which is a new thing that just started last week with like Jazz Cat and Ryan and some other friends, where we get to talk about all these lovely shorts on Alter, because like shorts deserve love too. At the time of this, like both of my plays will be like done for now, but hopefully there'll be more virtual stuff and I'll keep everybody in the loop.
Shout out to shorts. Thank you for saying that. I really, really want all the streamers to have a short category section on their platforms, because they are so hard to make and they do deserve love. And there's some great horror shorts out there, especially on Shudder. But I just in general want all the streamers to get down with it. So thank you for having me. This is Sade here again. And Afro Horror season 4, we're doing the Year Creator, and we are interviewing independent Black horror creators above and below the line, because I so agree with what you said, Miss Due. Below the line needs love and attention too. I'm talking makeup artists, horror, wardrobes, PAs, gaffers, all of the good people below the line. We want to interview you. So if you're available, please inbox us at info@afrohorror.com. But that's what we're doing for the rest of the year, so I can get to know some more people out there. I finished line producing a horror film in Hawaii that will come out maybe in the next 10 years. We'll see. I finished a room for Facebook Watch called Contacts, which is like a thriller with King Batch. That's on Facebook right now. Contacts spelled with a K and an X instead of a C. I didn't name it. Don't come for me. And I just finished my last assignment with Wondery for their podcast True Love, which is a Black podcast romance series, and I wrote season 5, and it's set in space, and I don't know when it'll come out, but it was my first attempt at romance writing, so we'll see. and that's it for me. Ryan,
you got this. For me, so I host Brother Ghoulish's Tomb, where I do horror reviews and share horror short stories that I've written. And I also have Brother Ghoulish's Dragula Breakdown for fans of the Boulay Brothers Dragula Drag Competition, which is a marrying of drag and horror culture, say less. And I'm a co-host of Blurty Massacre with my good friend Sharai and our other friend Zero. And we also have the Alter Tapes, like you said, where we look at shorts that are grossly under appreciated, I feel. And fun fact, Girl That's Scary, Jazz and Cat are the reason I know about Alter in the first place. I didn't know about it until y'all talked about it on your podcast. And so, yeah, and now I'm hooked, and I'm, spreading the gospel where I can. More excitingly, I did, and most people on the panel here know this because, we're also friends outside of this, but I finished my first book, which is There's Something Wrong in Morganton County. And it will hopefully be out soon. I'm working very hard to get that done. And thank y'all for dancing with me, because I am excited. It feels like it was a long time coming. It's just a collection of horror short stories, some of which I actually shared on my podcast in the first season. And then some of them are other stories that I have not released to the world, like a post-apocalyptic zombie world where people are getting high on zombie blood. So just a lot of random stuff, but I'm excited to bring it all to you. And if you want to keep up with me, like I said, it's just Brother Ghoulish. My website's www.brotherghoulish.com. And I'll try to keep everything over there because it's a lot of projects going on.
I also can't wait to give you some money, Ryan, because I've heard some of your stories on Brother Ghoulish.
Oh,
and
thank
so
you.
just know that first purchase is me. I woke up for
Oh.
it whenever it's ready.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot coming from you because I know you do not play with no bad stories. So thank you. That means a lot.
Oh my God. Wow. It's so much is coming out. And then y'all brought up the altar tapes. I be forgetting. I'm like, dang, I'm in like 8 projects. I don't know what, I don't even know which way is up sometimes. I just be waking up, going to school, teaching the kids, coming back and, doing a little something. But I feel like it's a labor of love. Like, cause you want the stories to come out. You have to, as Ryan was saying, the stories are gonna nag and nag and nag at you until you push them out and put them on paper and give them their own life instead of the one in your head. Cause then they're gonna talk and, bother you in your dreams and stuff. I'm tired of Aqua like literally looking me in the face when I'm in like trying to sleep. And my character is like, so what you doing? You gonna type a paragraph today, or I've been in the same spot for 3 weeks, love. Are we gonna move? So yes, right out there, everyone keep writing. Shout out to Dre for helping us put this together and pushing this out. And this Black History Month, although the world news was chaotic, I don't even want to talk about it. We can talk about that off recording. But Black History Month, at least we can pull together and really enjoy our media, our culture, our books, and everything else. So shout out to y'all for joining us. I know this was a lot. Everybody is working a lot, as y'all mentioned your projects. We're busy. Thank y'all for joining us. Hopefully we get to talk again, because we don't want to make this a 1 month thing. We don't want to make this a Black History Month and then we don't see each other for 12 months. I'm not doing that. I don't play that. Okay. So I will be pulling up on you. I just saying hello, retweeting you, just saying good morning. Bother y'all be seeing me on the timeline, bothering y'all, getting on y'all nerves. While I'm up playing The Sims. But yes, thank you for listening. And until next time. Bye guys.